I hope you all had a good lunch and maybe a walk around the hotel to be refreshed and to listen and contribute to this very interesting panel we have today, which I would like to welcome you in talking about shaping the future of manufacturing, which is a rather complex issue because not only technology, it's also culture, it is taking people along. So it's my honor today and my pleasure to lead this panel of very competent people here. But maybe a few lines to the digital transformation in general. I think digital transformation is changing the economy, no doubt, and is remodeling the business activities, also no doubt, and transforming the world of work and more in general affecting common daily activities from all of us. Over the past decades, the manufacturing sector has faced changes on multiple fronts. Emerging technologies have an impact on the entire value chain and are modifying the requirements of the labor market and how we work together. So today's panel will focus on the impact of digital transformation on industry and highlighting the challenges, but I think also more importantly, the opportunities that this transition will bring to the manufacturing sector. And it's very interesting, despite the remarkable efforts of the EU encouraging the use of advanced technologies, the EU businesses are currently not taking full advantage of them or of the innovative business models offered by the collaborative economy. And that basically means we have to be very careful that we don't miss out in this digital transformation potential. And I think we as business leaders, but also as the policymakers, must be prepared to go ahead with this transformation. We can see that, I think personally today already, that we have a lot of software companies from the US which come with very interesting software solutions into our machine markets. We see that other companies which are maybe at the moment fully in the B2C field are moving into the industrial field, offering new business models. So I think we have to be alert and try to take the journey, take the possibilities of the digital transformation, and also have a framework in which we can work for the next years to stay ahead with our leading technologies in machine technology and not being pushed on the side seat and somebody else is taking the business. So now I would like to introduce our panel group here with a 2-minute video. So, it's a very competent panel today, and I'm very happy to have you all here, that you made it here. I think it will really give us the opportunity to dive deep into the subject and reflect it from different angles. To start, I would like to ask Mr. Scott to come up and give us a very interesting presentation about the evolution of manufacturing in an ever-fasting digital environment.
Thank you, Michael. We are now 10 years from the launch of Industry 4 at Hannover Messe in 2011. And yet, what have we done? What's changed? And where are we going? Well, the drivers have changed. I think when Hannover Messe launched, and it was Angela Merkel that did it in 2011, the concept of Industry 4, we'd actually been doing Industry 4 for quite a long time. It's just we didn't have the brand. We've now got the brand of Industry 4. But as I said, the drivers are really changing. When Industry 4 was first promoted, it was very much about productivity, about pushing the improvement in productivity, increasing competitiveness. But now, following the pandemic, following the events over in the Ukraine, we're really starting to understand more and more about the drivers that we've got to respond to, and perhaps more importantly, that our children want us to respond to. And these are the drivers identified with it by everyone, by the World Economic Forum, the bottom line 3 pillars of sustainability: the economic sustainability, environmental sustainability, and perhaps most importantly, social sustainability. And that includes things like equality, diversity, inclusion, the opportunity to use some of the technologies that Industry 4 really brought to the table and promoted, but help us to work in a more coherent way, pulling together those 3 pillars and to understand why we're doing something. So really, sometimes, yes, you might want a good economic outcome, but it's bad for the environment. Well, that's not acceptable these days. So you might have to take the hit on the economic aspect to improve your environmental aspect. You might have to take a hit on the economic aspect to improve your social aspect. So we've got to consider these 3 drivers at the same time. But at the same time, we've got to improve and push towards having a resilient base to our activities. And that base can actually be driven by data. Because informed decision making is really where we're going. And that's what Industry 4 was all about. The ability to make better decisions more quickly and move away from the subjective nature of it to become objective and more objective. But where are we moving towards? Well, we're moving towards a world where technology is accelerating so much faster than traditional manufacturing. And this is an issue for us. We're working in an environment where we've got influencing from 2 different clock speeds. We've got new technologies coming through at such a rate that people are actually not investing because they know it's going to change. And we can't afford to do that. We've got to just accept that, yes, I know that my computer or my mobile phone or whatever will be out of date tomorrow, but I need it today. So we're looking at different things coming through. We're looking at the next level of process automation. And that's automation not just of materials handling and goods movement, but also of the handling of data. It's interesting to see the UK is actually about 20 points behind the rest of Europe in terms of its productivity. Japan is 20 points behind the UK in terms of its productivity. And as I'm sure a number of people in this room will understand and know, Japan's actually got about the 3rd highest number of robots per 100,000 people in the world. So why is their productivity so bad? Because they do an awful lot manually with data. And they handle that data manually because it's a cultural challenge. They want to have a job where they're sat beside their boss and their boss's boss and their boss's boss. So they've got large numbers of people handling data manually, and that's impacting on their productivity. We're also seeing other technologies coming through. We see VR and AR, virtual reality and augmented reality, but those are just mechanisms to actually deliver that data, the right data to the right person at the right time. And to do that, we need to be able to move that data. So we're looking at the future of connectivity, 5G, other technologies coming through, LoRa, LP1, we're talking about 6G already. But that's just a communications protocol. And okay, 5G can give us that protocol where we've got lower latency, higher bandwidth, and all of those other good things. But these technologies are evolving at such a rate that for manufacturers to be able to adopt them, they've really got to understand why. But all of these technologies really contribute to something that was mentioned in the introduction to the speakers. And I'm glad Sean's here today, because Industry 5 is where we're going. First mooted in Japan as Society 5.0 in about 2016. It's very much looking at the natural evolution. Yes, we've taken Industry 4, and we're looking at making better decisions more quickly. And there was a dystopian view that the factory of the future would have two employees. They would have a man and a dog. And the man would be there to feed the dog, and the dog would be there to make sure the man didn't touch any of the machines, because it would be all autonomous. We're not going there. We're not going there anytime soon. But where we are going is we are going to make use of the human better. The human will be actually centric to Industry 5. Really, really looking at using the human for what the human is good at. What is the human good at? Creative decision making. A computer can't think creatively. You might think it can, but actually it can only do what it's been told to do by the human. And let's use that human creativity. But then look at that human creativity and bring together those other technologies, those emerging technologies, looking at the bio-inspired engineering, looking at the sort of the ability to mix the human and the machine together. We then move into the areas of digital twins, and you could have a whole seminar on digital twins. You ask 7 people in a panel, what's a digital twin? And you probably come up with 8 answers, because there's no standards, there's no common understanding. But what do digital twins do? Allow you to make better decisions more quickly. Artificial intelligence. We're not quite there yet. We still don't really understand it. Legislation has still got to catch up. And we still don't trust it. How many of us here have looked at sat-nav and gone, nah, I know a better way? But that's probably because you've got more information than the system has. So it's about getting that data into the system. And the impacts of all of these sorts of technologies allow us to become more energy efficient, allow us to reduce the impact on the planet. But really, Industry 5 is going to be looking at human-centric, resilient and sustainable future. And how is that going to impact on manufacturing? Well, if we look at manufacturing over time, really, the product variety along the bottom and product volume up the side. So in the old days, when everything was done individually, the variety was huge, but the volume was low. And then we moved towards the industrialization phase, where the variety went down. What was it, Model T Ford? You can have any color you like as long as it's black, but the volume went up. Brilliant. We're now moving into Industry 3, Industry 4, where we're beginning to enable us to do high volume, but high variety, so mass customization. But as we move towards the adaptive cognitive manufacturing as shown here, the polygon at the bottom, that's going to be a threat. Because if you consider the manufacturing landscape at the moment, you've got your high volume producers, and you've got your low volume producers. And those low volume producers tend to be niche, tend to be the base of the SME environment. But as we become more flexible, as we become able to adapt and change more quickly, what's going to stop the large volume manufacturers being able to move into that low volume space and therefore threaten those low volume producers at the moment. What is their role going to be in the future? That's something we're still trying to work out. It may be that they are going to be the innovators. They will innovate and then pass it over to the low volume, large producers. But also, is this going to change the demographic of the manufacturing world? Are we going to lose large numbers of SMEs in the manufacturing base because they've been taken over by the large producers? Just food for thought. So in summary, I was talking to James Selke from the MTA earlier. Doing a 10-minute introduction is really a lot harder than doing a 1-hour presentation, but I will just summarize now. Technology is changing faster than ever before, and we've really got to plan for it. We've got to embrace that, but planning for change doesn't mean doing nothing. The skills required are changing. We need to bring through those digital natives, those digital employees into manufacturing. And at the moment, that's a huge challenge because manufacturing doesn't have the reputation that the fintech sector or the creative sector has. We really need to encourage people to come in. And I was just saying, the way to do that will be to, let's try and get a manufacturer as a character in a soap opera. Because that way we're reaching our next generation of manufacturing engineers. We need to link up those supply chains. And it may be the innovators to the low volume producers, to the large volume producers. And we need to link them up sooner rather than later, otherwise we will lose them. And really, the whole manufacturing mindset needs to change. Don't think about the way that we used to do it. Think about the way we're going to do it. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Very interesting. Starts. Sorry? Very interesting. Sorry. Very interesting thing, you know. It already made me start thinking, and I think it also builds on what I said before. We really have to be careful that not some other players suddenly move in because we are a little bit too stubborn to change, or don't have the capabilities to change, or don't know the way. So I would like to ask you maybe one more question to build on that. What do you see at the moment as the main challenges in taking the next step?
I really think it's about, let me take one step back. Within the Catapult, we work in the translational research space, so we're sort of TRLs 4 to 7. And the first question we get asked about digital transformation is, how much is it going to cost me? What's the return on investment? And that's actually really difficult to give at the moment because so many companies are just doing it and they haven't quite got the bottom line worked out yet. And that creates a hesitancy in other companies from starting it. But I would say that, you know, the big barrier is knowledge of where to start, funding, about funding that start, but then it's also, like I said earlier, changing the mindset. We need to move away from traditional waterfall project management, having plans that stretch out for years, and look at an agile methodology where, you know, failure is an option. Except, let's not call it failure. Let's call it experimentation. Let's experiment and move on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a very good point, and you already answered my next question. What are the common trends I want to ask you in approaching the subject? But yeah.
No, carry on.
That one. And then also maybe some typical traps.
The traps are trying to do everything at once. Mm-hmm. You know, an awful lot of people are sold on this idea that a digital transformation is a big bang. You're going to do it and your business is going to change overnight. Start small and scale, but that scalability is dependent on having the right skills available.
Yes, very important. Thank you very much, Rob.
No problem.
May I ask you, Mrs. Haltin Stiegenberg, You're coming from the Institute of Innovation and Technology to us, and just a question, you have these ongoing changes, and with all the challenges which we just discussed, with, which are coming with them, and what do you see nowadays as the main challenges for SMEs to tackle these challenges, what we just also discussed? And especially also your institute, this EIT, what kind of solutions are you offering or programs are you offering to help SMEs to tackle the challenges and go over the barriers?
Thank you for the question. It's a very good question, of course. And but let me start with EIT manufacturing. I mean, it's you can say our task is to make things happen, is to connect actors in the ecosystem, it's the industry, academia, and also, of course, SMEs and startups and research organizations. And if you go back to your question here, I mean, I see two different challenges, you can say. Then for a, let's say, traditional SME, of course, this transition to a digital future is a challenge, exactly as you have described here. And then to have a skilled workforce is, as I say, is the main challenge, actually. And the value that we can offer then from EIT manufacturing, we put quite a lot of focus into easy, accessible knowledge. So we have upskilling, reskilling programs, and we have a digital platform, Skills Move, and you're all welcome, actually, to get access into that if you like and check it out. And on the other hand, you have also another type of SME, the startup scale-ups, which are delivering, let's say first developing, but then delivering the new solutions, the digital solutions, which can act as an enabler. Digitalization is not the one alone stand thing, it's an enabler. That is how we should look upon it. And for them, you can say that the challenge is actually to get the new technology and solutions implemented, to have them tested, verified in large scale, so they can get access to end users. And that is also some programs that we have from EIT Manufacturing. We are here to support this kind of SMEs. So what we have programs like Access to Market, where we support in connecting to well, what could be end users, customers at the end then. Access to finance, so we're also funding opportunities to offer. We have also then we can also offer equity up to 300,000 euro. And also we do some mentoring, coaching. We can offer training to have a pitch in front of investors, as an example. I mean, a small startup needs to be trained in doing that, to sell their ideas, so to say. And also then, we have then also then a possibility to invite them, so to say. So SMEs and startups are welcome also to take part in our call for proposals, so they can take part in consortium in innovation projects, work together with corporates, with universities, with research organizations. And we have quite a significant budget to support those kind of projects also. And we see that the combination of smaller startups, larger corporates, the corporates with the challenges, startups with the solutions, it's a very, very, very successful way of making things happen. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. Maybe one question building on that. I had this little provocating statement, you know, that we have to be careful not to be being overtaken by some international competitors or different cultures. So where do you see at the moment in this race for digitalization the gaps between the European machine tool industry and the rest, the Asians, Chinese, Japanese, and the Americans? Americans mainly on the digital side.
It's a very good question, but if we look into Europe then, what we traditionally is not that good at is actually to collaborate cross-functional, cross-border, so to say, and that is something we need to be better at, and because that is boosting innovation. So a collaborative approach is very important. And also if you look into where we are right now with the transition of industry into more sustainable industry than the manufacturing industry, you cannot do that on your own. You need to find a partner to collaborate with. And that is also something that we support from our side, and that is actually why we exist, EIT Manufacturing, to support the industry to be able then to tackle this challenge then. And to give you an example here, as an example then, connecting to digitalization and robotics then, we have had a project and it started with the matchmaking in 2019, Research Institute, Volkswagen, and another large player. It was Aerospace Valley and also furniture manufacturing in Sweden. So it was a cluster of different partners then. They needed flexible robots that could also be used in additive manufacturing. So that ended up in a project actually with a solution then, software solution, I would say. But that means that any kind of flexible robot can be used as a 3D printed unit. So it's a great idea and a great success actually. And as a result, in that project, a startup was created to commercialize that idea now. So that is a very good example on the way of support we can offer them. And also if you look into another very hot topic right now in the industry, and that is electrification of the automotive, the battery production, and battery recycling. Then you're coming into this big variety. You have many variants if you look into batteries. How to recycle that, how to do that in an efficient way. You cannot just scrap it. You need to dismantle it, actually demanufacture it, to set up a demanufacturing production line that is efficient. And then you're coming into automation and flexible robots and digitalization to enable that. So, yeah.
Very interesting, very conclusive. Very good. And
So we
so
have
what I
so we have
heard
a
that
chance
Volkswagen
in
was
Europe.
also in there, so this innovation is not only in Sweden, but you offer this all over Europe.
Yes. EIT Manufacturing is a European organization. So it's we also say owned. Our owner is the EU Commission and EIT then in Budapest. We're a European organization, headquartered in Paris, have co-location centers all over Europe. I am coming from Gothenburg for the North region. North region is including the Nordics, the Baltics, and UK. So it's covering all UK also, then the region that I'm responsible for. Then, so we are connecting, also of course, and we are linked towards the rest of Europe, of course. Then yes.
Excellent. I will note that down. Also maybe for our personal purpose.
What do you say now?
I will note that down also maybe for our own needs, digital transformation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
But I think you touched a very important subject, of course, is this collaboration, and I would like to ask you, Mr. Liani, about this, and how do you see these knowledge sharing platforms today, and how they can contribute to tackle the challenges we face, what we just discussed?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I take some notes this morning, and the first note is about that the manufacturing sector is a very complex ecosystem, and like complex systems, we know that the solution is not only on a single element, on a single instrument, but we have to move with the synergy of many factors and competencies. And historically, we know that establishing places where to discuss it, to dialogue about what to do in the future is a very important element, and it's important to have a debate in discussion points like discussion board, national and international association that allow to growing the sharing knowledge of the sectors. And today, digital instrument and digital places are a very big opportunity for that, because this type of agora permits to reduce the distances and other barriers like the costs of moving for talking about things. And I think that associations like IoT, IEEE, ACM in the ICT sectors, or like SESIMO and other manufacturing associations are the good places for talking what we want to do for the future. And using digital instruments, we can do the job very quickly and reducing the cost respect the past. And what I think is that this reduction of costs and barriers is a very big opportunity for the small, medium enterprises, because we know big companies have budgets for making this type of activities, and many times in the past, small, medium enterprises was blocked because they haven't the budget for making discussion, to be part of the discussion. And I believe that digital instruments can permit to the small, medium European ecosystems to work together with the other players.
Yes, very interesting. A question also, I think it builds like what Mrs. Hultin-Stiegenberg said and what you're saying. My question would be, is there any is there any contact between your organizations?
Yes, I know AIT. I collaborate with the South AIT, and for a small medium enterprise is a very good opportunity, because permit to be in contact with big corporates, to share our ideas how to work in a more agile method. Because what we know is many times small medium enterprises are more fast on changing.
Yes. So that's very. I think that's a very good base just to check. I think that is also important. That different institutions, they cross-fertilize with their activities, and but I think there's still, like you mentioned it, that there are limited resources in terms of financing, but also in respect of people working into our industry. I think Scott, you also mentioned it before. It's one of the main barriers. How do we attract the people into the machine building industry, especially? And from a perspective of a CEO, what policy development would make the biggest impact in boosting the digital innovation amongst SMEs in Europe to tackle the financing and the shortage of people?
Yes, like told before, I believe that digital technologies permit to reduce the cost and permit to the small, medium enterprises to be part of the discussion. And what I think the policy can make is to support this movement of small, medium enterprises to be part of the discussion, and to invest in places like digital innovation hubs, for example, European digital innovation hubs, that permits to share best practice, not only at a European level, but also to national one, because we can take practice for other countries and move in a single country, and then to invest in the digital infrastructure, because we know we can talk about digital transformation if we are able to move the data across the nation. Yeah. And it is very important. What I think is that all of us, we have in mind the change of the future for us and for the future generations. And I think we have the possibility to win the challenge of sustainability. And for this, what I can say to the policy is to be engaged to simplify this shaping activity on the future.
Thank you very much. That is, makes a lot of sense. And I would like to pass on the next question, actually, therefore, also to Mr. Sean Regan from the European Commission. And to basically just say, like in the present, there's also a certain period of high uncertainty which we are living in, and how can Europe capitalize on this digital revolution and to enable manufacturing, like what I said, to attract the necessary talent to stay ahead in this race for innovation.
Mm-hmm.
I think Rab has already put it very eloquently that a human-centric approach has to be at the core of this. That it's about seeing human resources as an investment for the business rather than a cost, so that you, in this way, the employees are part of the process of adopting the technologies. And in that way they become familiar with them, and they facilitate the process then of the technologies being adopted in the company. And this allows, as Rab has said, to bring together the opportunities of smart systems through new digital technologies with the creativity of the workforce. And I think that's very important in the current situation, where the demand for people with digital skills is very high. And more we're seeing that the younger generation who are now coming onto the jobs market, they want to work for employers who share their values and who will give them a challenging and creative career. And therefore, companies that can show that they invest in human resources and take this human-centric approach will be successful in this. And what's an interesting element that's beginning to see now is that the backgrounds that young people coming into industry from are not necessarily the typical ones of the past. We're seeing examples now where companies that are taking this more creative approach to human resources are able to attract people with backgrounds in, for example, architecture. And bring in this broader skill range to companies. That leads on then to the whole question of using the digital technologies to support sustainability, because of course respect for planetary boundaries is one of the elements that younger people are very engaged with now. And by using digital technologies in an appropriate way, it is possible to implement the business in a way where you use less to achieve more in terms of resources, which in turn benefits the bottom line of the company, and also allows companies to adopt full product life cycle approaches, which also help to contribute to the sustainability goal. And indeed, probably most importantly at this moment, the whole challenge of resilience after the COVID pandemic and now the war in Ukraine has put a great stress on global supply chains. And so companies that are using digital technologies to really avail of what they can do to tell them about their supply chains and using data in an effective way. These are the ones which have this flexibility, which seem to be succeeding most in the current environment of uncertainty.
Yes, thank you very much. I think in the field of advanced manufacturing, the EU can consider itself really as a hub of very advanced research skills. And it can support also this area. Especially when you see what comes out of our universities, and so I think that we can be proud in the machine building industry. But I think one of the big challenges is not only what we develop in software and machinery, or combined software with the machinery, or even like in administration where we do a digital transformation, but how also to take the people along on whether it's the basic workers in the factory or also the market in this one, to make him understand. It's a great opportunity. This morning we talked about Umati, and I said in another panel, I said maybe we also have to convince the customers it's a great solution, not only ourselves. So how do you see how to bridge the gap between R&D and really the market or the base workers, the majority of the people working for us? So how to bring the horsepowers on the road?
Yeah, it's a very pertinent question, and something that we have been looking at in detail. And we have now, just at the moment, quite an interesting example which we think can be very powerful. There is now a cooperation agreement that's been signed between the European Factories of the Future Association, which is a private partner in our Made in Europe industrial partnership, and EIT Manufacturing, that they will work together so that the research results coming out of projects in the Made in Europe partnership and indeed the Factory of the Future partnership under Horizon 2020 can then be taken forward. And EIT Manufacturing, to help to get this started, has set up a pilot action called Innovate Together. And under this, it will take the most promising research results from the projects of the partnerships to take them forward to piloting and experimentation and bringing them to the market. So we see this very concrete example as a way of starting to bridge this gap. I mean, the Made in Europe partnership has a budget of 900 million euros under Horizon Europe. Already 225 million have been committed in the first work programme. So there's an excellent pipeline coming through, and what we need to do now with our colleagues in the EIT Manufacturing is to capitalise on this Innovate Together initiative to really take the best of the results that are coming out of these projects so that they can be brought to market in a very effective way. Also, another thing we've been looking at is university-industry relations have tended to look at it from the point of view of universities saying, we have these research results that we think industry could be interested in, and rather turning that around and saying a more demand pull approach, asking industry what are the research technological results that you would like to have that could be most useful in your business, and connecting back to universities so that universities more are focusing on research that is of relevance, direct relevance to industry today.
Thank you very much for these insights. Therefore, I would like to just go on to one of your colleagues, Mr. Blanchard. Is he online?
Yes, I am.
Thank you very much. Now we might even see you. Welcome to our panel. Could you follow what we were all saying?
Yes. I even took notes.
Okay, good. Yeah. One question. What do you think? Could you explain to our audience here how do you ensure that the regulations in the digital environment and the safety areas are well coordinated and do not hamper the market growth or the innovation potential of the manufacturing industry? So to find the right balance between controlling the development and also giving enough freedom to innovate?
Yes, that's a key question indeed. And all of us know that it's very difficult to strike, I would say, the right balance between a wide variety of objectives. And it's true at all levels. It's true at the level of business. It's true also at the level of the Commission, whenever we have to make proposals. But it's true also for our other institutions here at EU level, and I'm referring to the Parliament and the Council, as they have to adopt text regulations which are then applicable to you. And we've seen recently in the European Parliament that striking the right balance is not necessarily that easy. Of course, there may be a lot of factors explaining what happened last week in the Parliament when the Parliament decided to vote it down a couple of texts related to the Fit for 55 package, but still, one of the main arguments was that the balance was not right. And I would like to say also that you're right to underline the importance of the digital environment. Developments in this area have a deep impact, and they force in particular also to have a more comprehensive approach of safety. Previously, the legislation was mainly about physical safety, and just to make sure that, for example, you don't accidentally lose one finger when operating a machine. But now, of course, the situation has evolved. More and more machines and devices are now digital, and new rules are needed, in particular on the cybersecurity side. Here in DG GROW, because I am from the Director General GROW, we are busy with that, and in particular, I will take here a couple of examples. So we have revised the machinery directive to make it future-proofed to emerging digital technologies, and now the text is being discussed by the Parliament and the Council. Last year, end of last year, the Commission adopted a delegated act under the Radio Equipment Directive to, in particular, take into account cybersecurity requirements. And I can say also that we are working, especially in my unit, we are working on a revision of the Product Liability Directive to take into account, in particular, I would say, the new challenges stemming from the digital transformation, and just to make sure that this framework is adapted to this new environment. And there are, of course, many ways to ensure, I would say, that regulations are coordinated and take into account a wide variety of objectives. I would say, just to be very practical, just to start with, here we have a strong internal processes, and I'm sure that Shan can confirm that. So I spare you the details, but of course, we have also internally a quite inclusive process with Directorate Generals promoting also various objectives. And I would say that once we have a legislation in place or regulation in place, regular reviews are important just to make sure that the initial balance is still valid given the developments. But more importantly, I would like to highlight two aspects. First, we develop strategies and which put forward a vision and aim at taking a broad perspective. And I would like here to take one example, the new industry strategy, for example, which is a key reference for us, and in particular for the proposals that we have to prepare here in the Commission. But the second element, probably also the most important one, is that we interact with stakeholders. We interact with stakeholders to get their views, to better understand the situation on the ground, and to better understand also the situation of those who are going to be affected by a new initiative or who are already affected by such an initiative. And even I would say in some cases, we want to co-create processes, we want to co-create solutions. And here I can take one example, which is the transition pathways, the green and digital transition pathways, which were initiated by the updated industry strategy adopted by the Commission. And we believe very much in these interactions. That's why, by the way, it's so important to have this industry forum. And I would like here to thank Sesimo for being one of the courageous of one of the task force, which is working in the context of this industry forum. We are waiting for your policy recommendations. We are waiting for your views. You have a fantastic key opportunity just to contribute actively to striking, I would say, the right balance. And finally, just briefly, I would say also that we still have to continue working and to make sure that developments at the international level also are fully aligned with our objectives, and that indeed they also contribute to our efforts to make sure that the balance is the right one. And from the machinery regulation and industry perspective in the safety and digital domain, now we've noticed that there is some movements on harmonized standards covering the challenges stemming from connectivity or artificial intelligence in terms of machinery being able to withstand, for example, cyber attacks, or also machinery able to go to a safe mode when a system is compromised. So that's, I would say, generally speaking, the method we can also implement to make sure that the many objectives you mentioned in your questions are, I would say, achieved. But it's a difficult exercise, and we have to be humble and modest on this side. That's why we have to definitely interact.
Absolutely, and I think it's a rather abstract and complex subject, but with a huge potential. And yes, I have one more question for you. And when we talk about digital transformation today, one of the big milestones is to build a data-driven economy. And in this regard, could you explain the reasons behind the Commission's launching of the data spaces? And what are the value addeds for the manufacturing industries to be seen in the next 5 to 10 years in these activities?
So you said it, data is essential when we talk about digital transformation, and it was already highlighted a couple of times, in particular by Rob in his introduction. There is no digital transformation without data. That's something which is very simple to understand, at least to say. And it's difficult, of course, just to implement everything or to draw all the lessons and conclusions from this, but at least it's clear, and the Commission is fully aware of that there is no digital transformation without data. And we know also that digital transformation is absolutely key, critical for our competitiveness, for our resilience, and our green transition also to a large extent. This was already mentioned by colleagues beforehand. And together with, I would say, two big pieces of legislation, the Data Governance Act, which has just been adopted, and with the Data Act, which has been proposed by the Commission the beginning of 2022, data spaces are a key component of the data strategy put forward by the Commission in 2020. And at the time, the Commission proposed indeed 10 data spaces, including manufacturing, by the way. But in the end, more will be developed. I'm just here taking an example, which is far from probably your preoccupations, but it's something which is developed in my directorate, which is the tourism data space. And we see also what the impact is. But the ultimate goal of these data spaces is that together, we are going together, all these data spaces will form a genuine single market for data. Where data is pooled, shared, and where data pooling and sharing is or are facilitated. So for those probably less familiar with the concept of data space, which has been put forward by the Commission, I would like to say that common European data spaces bring together infrastructure and governance framework. They deploy data sharing tools and services open to a wide number of organizations. They federate cloud capacities and related services. They include governance structures which determine the rights concerning access to and processing of data. And they also improve availability, the quality and interoperability of data. And with these elements, we are going to be able to overcome existing legal and technical barriers to data sharing. We are not building data spaces for the sake of building a data space. In the end, we want to facilitate data sharing and pooling, as I said, but just to be more concrete, I would like to say that we want companies to exploit these possibilities, to use and reuse data, and we want them to access more and better data. And we want them to use data in particular to optimize their internal processes, their business processes, enhance their productivity with, for example, predictive maintenance, supply chain management, fraud detection. We want companies to use data to improve also customers facing activities, pricing, promotion, optimization. We want also companies to accelerate innovation, to develop new products, services, and new data-driven business models. We want, in the end, companies to use data to foster market growth. It will take a bit of time, but work is ongoing, and the Commission will dedicate funds to set these data spaces up. So let's work on this. Let's meet, you and my successors, in 5 to 10 years' time to see how you benefited from these initial efforts.
Mr. Blanchard, that gives me a lot of hope. And but 5 to 10 years is too far for me to see. So what do you think? When will we have the first minimal viable product which we can use and log in?
So work is ongoing. So it's it's the work on the various data spaces is going to be not necessarily completely coordinated. It depends very much on maturity of the sectors and so on. So here work is ongoing. I can provide you, I will check with colleagues dealing with the manufacturing data space, probably a bit more how things are going on their sites. I was not able to meet them for a couple of reasons during these days. I'm not directly in charge of this data space, but I'm sure that in the coming years, it will be possible at least to start working on this. What I can say is that data spaces are not infrastructure driven. So we don't need necessarily to build a new infrastructure, a brand new infrastructure just to be able to access data. The idea is just to reuse as much as possible to connect elements which in the end would also constitute a data space.
Thank you very much. I'm looking really forward to that, and also have a safe data space, you know, which where we can move and fully utilize the data we need. Thank you very much for your comments. Please stay logged on. Huh? Please stay online.
Yes, yes. We'll listen carefully.
Very good. Huh? Thank you very much. I would like now to go to industry, and first to you, Mr. Hutchison. Hutchison, that's very difficult for me to digest.
It's good enough.
Andrew, it's okay.
Andrew,
yeah, it's good. From Siemens' point of view, from your point of view, what do you think are the technologies with the major impact now we can expect? And what do you think, what are the barriers at the moment of implementing these advances?
the main technology, if you take it in a single word, is simulation. You know, the digital goal is to simulate a product, simulate the process, and simulate the factory to make it. All done in the digital terms. You can go backwards and forwards till you make the perfect product in a perfect process in a perfect factory. Any variation of the product can be handled, and all this is done in a suite of laptops, all connected together, and so you make the perfect digital thread. Now that's the theory. Now you expect companies like Siemens would adopt this immediately because the rewards are so huge. But I've got two examples. I've been working with Ford for the last 3 years. Well, it was a 3-year project, COVID made it 4. But it was between Cologne, Dagenham and Dearborn to manufacture digitally an electrical motor for an EV product. The product could have been anything. The project was to investigate the digital tools available and were they viable or not. Now you think, okay, for somebody like Ford, it'd be common sense. It'd be no decision, a no-brainer, as we say. However, when you look into Ford and BMW and all those automotive manufacturers, their economics, and it's all economically driven, is every project has 4 or 5 year program. With an engine plant, although we're not going to make any more engines, it's a 7-year plant. From beginning of day one to job one is 7 years, and millions of euros invested. So it cannot be 1 day late because €1 million is lost each time. So you think this would be really obvious, that you take a digital tools which would highlight and evolve and make that project efficient and fast. However, then you get people, and the people do not want to take a risk. They don't want to risk their careers on making a wrong decision to adopt a digital technology that they have no confidence in and is unproven. So the project been running together with Ford, Frolic, and several other small and large organisations was to test digital tools. It was a government-funded project where they could actually look at a hypothetical factory with a hypothetical product and practice and play with all the different variations of software without any risk, without any job one, you're going to lose your job because it's late. And this really did work out well because Ford now adopted a suite of Siemens software that they would not adopt before because of the risk. They can bring a 7-year project down to 5 years project because of the risk of actually, would a machine work? Would the product fit? Would it actually work well together? Can you make a whole line? Is now done on laptops in advance. They don't need to do the fat test in a factory because they can test it remotely using the digital twin of the project. So we talked about Amati this morning, somebody was saying about the digital connection. It took 3 years, I think somebody said, to make all the machines talk together. That's one thing I didn't realise, and Ford said when they get the line of machines on their shop floor, they build in 6 months to make the machines talk to each other. Because they know they will not. They know there will be problems in the software, the interpretation of the standards, So when a Marty comes along and you can run simulator Marty remotely, it means when the machines arrive and you plug them in, they work. So from that, they've adopted these digital tools because now they have the confidence because they've tested them offline. Because testing them in a real scenario with millions of euros at stake, nobody's the confidence to do that. Now you think that an SME would look at this and go, okay, but my favorite question from an SME point of view is why? Because if you said to an SME, adopt my digital tools, I will half your costs and double your production, they will sign. Now, if you just come along as a salesman and say, I have some digital tools, they haven't got the confidence, they don't know where to get it, what's the return on investment, am I risking my whole company on this venture because if it doesn't work, I close. If it does work, I get the lead. The flip side of that one is Siemens. We have several what we call lighthouse factories. One of them is in UK, one in China and two in Germany, where their motto is try everything, fail fast, or try everything, fail cheap. So it's a different remit. So on Ford was, we have to build a project to build a product because we have an investment in place. With Siemens, and Siemens, as everybody knows, is not a sentimental company. If a factory isn't producing economically, it closes, it shuts, it moves to somewhere else, or that division closes and we adopt new factories or acquire new plants. So the Congleton factory, together with the other lighthouse factories, were given a challenge. Outproduce the other factories that make your product, or we close you. So the solution to that was to bring the workforce in and say, we are going digital, or we die. What do you want to do? And the answer was, bring it on. So then went to the leadership, the cultural changes, the adoption, because then all the changes that went through in that factory since that was done 8 to 9 years ago have now been adopted with a happy smile and a face of workers who have now got a secure job. So we went from a factory in Congleton that makes 500,000 variations of an inverter drive to now 500,000 units of an inverter drive with 33,000 variations, the batch size of one. They can now outproduce any factory and outproduce our Nanjing factory by a factor of 3 to 1. So a UK factory outproduced a Chinese factory.
Incredible. That is absolutely incredible, and that's where we want to walk toward for various reasons, for our own competitiveness, exactly. And also to ease our supply chains.
Yes. So the barriers, when it comes to an SME, because one of my jobs is to promote digitalization as a concept to the SME community, is confidence, accessibility, and where to start. The confidence has to be, where can I see it before? Have I got the confidence to take that jump? Accessibility, that's where the catapults come into it, the associations that can actually help a company adopt a new technology without risk or can test it. They can then see other companies that are in a similar environment or a similar industry and actually say, I can see that's working now, I want to try that. Many of the SMEs I go to talk about it though, are not ready, they're industry 2. So actually just taking through the journey for digitalization can actually highlight industry 3. Then maybe industry 4 after that, because a lot of SMEs start as startups and evolve from a family company, and they're so busy producing product, they haven't got time to innovate and change. Their customer wants something. If their customer says you go digital, they will go digital. If their customer wants cheaper prices, they will try and do everything to lower the price. And they think digitalization is the answer, but maybe it is, but not yet. Even just Lean, Six Sigma, and all the different assets. So companies quite often, SMEs are quite often, just need to rationalize themselves and take a good external, outside look at it, at their processes, just to work out how to do things better.
That's a very good answer, and the busy point is also a very good point, that you're busy with your daily business and don't have enough capacity to go ahead with digital transformation projects.
Exactly.
And confidence is also a very good one. I think, good point. Now, and I think, I think one big thing now, you change a whole factory. You did this in Siemens and so. But if you look at the general economy, we have, I think, also a big requirement on the workforce, which is required for the future to work in our factories, to work with our machines. And what do you think is the skill set for the new, for the workforce in the future, to go through this digital transformation, and what should SMEs do to tackle these challenges?
The skill set is training. It's viable. It's flexible. I mean, we've seen this before. I mean, I don't know, when Industry 4 was launched, back in 2011 at the Hannover Messe, the next EMO exhibition was every machine had Industry 4 ready, because the machine tool industry had adopted majority of Industry 4 concepts long before anybody had thought about the term Industry 4. And it was all end user driven, it was all concept driven, it was all to make a better product faster, cheaper, more accurately for their customer. And when CNCs took over from manual machines, there was a training. When they linked together with CAD/CAM, there was a training program. So if you guarantee people their jobs and give them the means to learn to adapt, then majority will adapt to that job. Because why wouldn't they? Now, you said the labour market's changing, as somebody mentioned before. I've been in Siemens 35 years. My sons have changed jobs more times in the last 5 years than I have in the last 50 years. But their tool set is transferable. They learn about software, cloud management, and what their skill set is now takes them into law, into medicine, into engineering, because of transferable skill set. And I think that's what we've got to look at now, is not looking at the people in this audience who, all of us, probably come all the way through the ranks and worked our way through from the bottom upwards. Our children have no intention of doing that. Our children want to sit at home on their laptops and engineer the world from there, and chat with their friends while they're doing it, and have a meeting by Team or Zoom, not sit at 6 hours on a motorway to get to and from a meeting. It's a different mindset, and I think that the next generation is ready for that. We just need to help them get there. And again, I come back to my favourite question, is why? Because if the why is answered, the rest of it will feed into it.
Very good answer, and also to see, it's not only the skill set, it's also the purpose and the drive. The drive the next generation wants to have. And of course, then we also have the generation in between us.
Yes.
So, thank you very much, Andrew, for this good insights. And Julian, I also come to you from ABB Robotics. How do you see the manufacturing? At the moment, manufacturing is extremely active in the digital transformation. We said this during the last 1.5 hours here. And how do you see the human-centric approach in general here in the EU and the UK to make it happen? Can you give us some concrete examples of what ABB does to ensure that humans remain in the center of robotic automation?
Yeah, and it's a very good question. Working in robotics is one of the questions you face every day, that you think you're going to put a robot in and replace, like a human operative. But I think what you have to look at is sometimes if you've got a job that we say is dull, dangerous, dirty, sometimes they're the jobs that we as humans, we don't want to do those jobs. So that's the first thing to think about. But then you also have to think that it doesn't have to necessarily replace a human. We use a lot of applications where, for example, let's say in a machine tool application, maybe you've got a machine tool where you have an operative that stands for 8 hours a day loading a part into the machine. It's finished its process, they take the part out and put it onto a conveyor. They spend 8 hours doing that, which is pretty dull, and monotonous for them to be able to do that. Is it really adding value to that product? Probably very, very little. But you could have an example where, so the operative goes home at 5 o'clock at night, you then wheel up your robot station, you turn the lights out of the factory. As long as you've got parts, then you could be machining parts while everybody's gone home. You come back in the morning and you've got lots of parts ready that you haven't had to worry about heating, lighting, coffee breaks, all of those things. So what we're trying to do is use the robot in that example as an additive to something you've already got, and think about it that it's not what we're going to do is during the day we're going to operate our normal day shift, but when we turn the lights out at night we're going to use the robot to be able to produce more. Things like quality go up, the overall equipment efficiency go up, and all of those things you get with repeatability that you don't get if you've got an operator on a night shift. It's late, they've been working nights all week, they get tired, some problems that they have with that you tend to get into, fatigue. With a robot, they don't get tired, they don't take holidays, they don't take tea breaks.
Thank you very much, Julian. questions for me, like for SMEs or for our customers, or maybe also for ourselves. How do you see the journey of going like from a manual work to robot work and then to IoT-based remote app work on your robot, which might be the road of success?
And again, I think a few of the panelists have talked about it. Like I always use the saying, you can't boil the whole ocean, or you can't eat a whole elephant. You've got to start somewhere. And it's the same with automation. Whenever you start along an automation journey, first of all, you have to look at the process. Can you write the process down? And if it's something where you're using an operator, really you need to do one of them time and motion studies where you watch every single little thing the operator does for a start to find out the little quirks that they do. So then you have to look at the application. Then you need to decide, I've got this really complex application, and it can be done with a robot, for example, or done with automation. But then the trouble is, if you put that application into real life and it goes wrong, then you're never going to want to automate something again. So sometimes start with something that's really, really simple, like machine tool tending is a good example. It's a fairly simple application where you have parts, they're loaded into a CNC machine, they perform a function, the part's finished and it comes out. It's a really simple application. But the number of end users who buy multi-million-pound machines yet have operatives that are working them is quite incredible when you see it. So I think, first of all, when you're starting down that journey, you need to decide which bits of the automation you want to do. Make it nice and simple. Then as you start down that journey, we talk about the data itself. Now, we talk about Industry 4.0, Internet of Things, the Industrial Internet of Things. In reality, the data itself has no value. It's the analysis of the data that actually gives you the value. And pieces of software, applications, etc. provide that. And I think it all comes down, again, we've talked about things like risk and people who are worried about things, but how many of us in this room sit and have got a banking application on your phone? Do you worry that you push your thumbprint on your phone and you can get all your data from your bank? You don't worry about those sort of things because you're assured that this application has been written by some experts. But I think when it comes to industry, we tend to forget that. We tend to forget what we do at home. You sit at home and you go on a web page and it says, accept the cookies. Who in this room knows what happens when you accept those cookies? And I think a lot of that risk management, Andrew was just talking about it with the Ford thing, a lot of that risk management, when we do things at work, we think, well, my job's at risk. So we try to make a decision by a committee. When you're at home, you're your own CEO. So you don't have to necessarily make those decisions. Well, I've got this heating application on my phone. I'll just set the heating to 22 degrees and it's 22 degrees. I don't worry about when I've pressed that button, where it's gone in the internet, it's got back down to it, because I've had some trust in the people that built the application. I've got the cloud services that go to the part of my ISP that then come back into my home. And I think some of it is trust on the manufacturers to trust that we actually know what we're doing. We're trying to build that security in for manufacturing to be able to do that. So have a little bit of trust in us. If you let us come along with the journey with you, then we're going to help you. And like we said, using other technologies, using other things like catapults, for example, is a good place to start to really understand those journeys and how you can get to be where you want to be, and successfully transform your industry.
Excellent. Very good. It's a very good point. It's one thing is having the data, the other one having secure data, and I think also have a framework where we can move in securely also as companies and as customers. So thank you for answering all these questions, but I'm not the only one here in the room. So maybe there are some more questions from the room, from the discussions we had during the last hour. May I ask you to let me know what you are still considering to do. Please.
Sorry, Mark Ridgway, with my corporate hat on. Our company was formed in 1821, which is before RAB's Industry 1.0. We were painting. I've got paintings on my walls, which are 1850s. Our last painting was 2019. And we've been through multinationals as a mass producer, they've been taken over for economies of scale, that we've brought ourselves back out again as an SME in a very niche market. And I think one thing that all the panel have touched upon, but perhaps haven't mentioned, is when talking about sustainability, it certainly is the economic, environmental, and potentially social, but good corporate governance, understanding the structures and mechanisms that influence the control and direction of the company is critical. And whilst the acquisition of large companies by small companies, rather than being an inevitability, it's about making sure that small companies have got the access to those good corporate governance structures and can understand the market, understand digitalization, understanding the wave of technology, and ride that wave rather than be swamped by it. That's really the critical area, which I think everyone has touched upon, and I would certainly put corporate governance at the top of my sustainability list.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or maybe comments to build on what was said? No. Marcus.
Just thinking about where we are in the adoption of these technologies and what's happening in each country, because SMEs are always pressured for short term to get next month's orders, deliver last week's orders, and so on, and they don't have a staff structure to necessarily adopt these technologies easily. They don't have the spare people to experiment and fail and move on, like has been suggested. What role do you think government plays in trying to encourage and support SMEs to go on their digital journey?
Thank you very much, Marcus. Somebody wants to...
Yeah. I think I am the founder of a small medium enterprises that working on technology, and what I see in the past is that the open innovation can be an answer. Finding a collaboration with other companies, using instruments like digital innovation hubs or other elements on the country that can permit to make pilots. For example, it's very correct to say start from the simple. Every complex problem can be divided in simple ones, and the best is to start from the simple and growing and start taking in hand the knowledge, how to implement the technology. This is my point of view, like a CEO of a small medium company.
My opinion, Marcus, just government's got a huge role to play, but they have a role as an enabler, and they've actually got to enable places like EIT, the Digital Innovation Hub, the Catapults, to be these agnostic, open places that companies can go and experiment, can go and fail or succeed, and help them start their journey. But that only comes with sort of governmental support.
Got an example, a real example. Charlie Mayfield's Be the Business mentoring. So large companies like Siemens volunteer business managers like myself to go into SMEs to advise them on how a big company would actually address a certain problem. I mean, they ask, what does Siemens get out of this? And the answer is, we understand how SMEs think and work. Without that, we can't sell to them, in effect. There's one company I was mentoring, they rewound electrical motors. Now, this is pre-COVID, so their business was contracting because anything below 7.5 kilowatts was cheaper to buy from China than it was to actually rewind and manufacture. So the business was in decline. So I introduced them the idea of why don't they offer a service to their customers? Their customers, whether they make furniture or make cornflakes or beef burgers, are not in the business of rewinding motors. They're in the business of making furniture. So they don't want to break down. They don't want to have a problem. So why don't you digitalize the process? Look at their motors by using temperature sensors, using cloud technology and IoT and edge computing, and actually predict. So in theory, the day before a motor breaks down, you arrive with a new motor and change it. A different business concept that was enabled by digitalization. So from that, it was the cause, it was the need for them to change their business model, came backwards, the why, came backwards to answer the question of you need to go digital if you want to survive, and this is the tools you need to answer that question. So it was a bottom-up, not a top-down solution to a real problem. A real company wanted to survive and grow and flourish, and they needed an answer. And the answer was digital for a good reason.
Very good point. Any more comments from the plenum? Any more questions here from the CCSIMO members? Yeah, Michael?
I think it was already mentioned several times. The challenge will be to get these people. We are SMEs, we are metal people, you know, iron people. Now we are going into a digital journey, and we are not as attractive like a Google, like a SAP, like a Fanuc, the Siemens, the whatever call it, the Facebooks. I have trouble to find these people, to attract them, to motivate them, to develop them, and to keep them. So and then when you, I mean, I'm 61. If I'm ahead of a digital roadmap, I struggle to understand what is on the paper or on the PowerPoint. So and then I see that most of the companies on the roadmap are companies which have their own interest, their own business model. You're mentioning Siemens. I mean, they have their own digital roadmap. You're talking about digital twins. Nice for Siemens, but not for the manufacturer. So we're talking about Microsoft. They offer all the cloud solutions. Okay, go ahead. Connect your machine to the clouds. You pay a fortune. So what is the business model apart from these manufacturers and big players who offer nice solutions, and everyone would like to have a cake or a piece of the cake? And that's something which I see a bit a challenge for the future for us as a machine tool makers.
Yeah.
I don't say it's good to have it, but monetizing all of these things. Good luck.
Can I take that? I was going to say it's quite interesting. You talk about, you know, in order to attract young engineers. We talked about it earlier on about the engineers of the future. But maybe some of these things you've just been mentioning are those things. You know, like you say, machine tools maybe not exciting to a youngster who's just leaving college at 20, 21. But maybe having some technology that is, you know, robots or, you know, cloud services or the things that they use every day. You know, the fact that the things they're using as teenagers, you know, as they're growing up, the tools, the phone, all of those things they're using today, that's the sort of thing you've got to attract them with, that you've got a business that's not, you know, making lumps of metal, it's not machining, it's, well, do you know what, there's so much more to it. We're using a lot of this technology that you use in your day-to-day life to be able to do that. I tend to agree that maybe this thing around digital twins, understanding what that is and what it will bring to your business, but like Andrew was saying, that sometimes the important bit is if you can design it offline and get all of the mistakes done then before you've actually done anything in the real world, then you're going to minimise the amount of mistakes you make. And those sort of things, those sort of tools are the things that the youngsters are going to want to use. If you're using things like AR, VR headsets, for example, maybe they're a youngster into gaming. So they like gaming and they put a VR headset on and they sit at home and watching games. So maybe we have to look at how you're attracted them with some of the things they do, you know, in their personal life, to be honest.
Thank you very much, Julian. Is there a last question? Yeah, Wilfried.
Well, one aspect Michelle Howell just mentioned, aside from the young people, is you mentioned the Siemens perspective with the example of Ford, but we are not looking from top down. We are delivering machines into a brownfield environment at our customer sites. They have some IT structure, they have various controllers, and so what is the Siemens perspective to support us with an open system to really integrate machines into any environment and use the data?
So, taking Ford again as a company, a few years ago, a company called Lam Technical, it's now part of the Crosswell family of machines. They looked at supplying machinery with you pay by the part. It didn't work at the time because back in the 80s and 90s there was no communication, the machines were breaking down, and so the project failed. Now you can actually charge by the parts. You now can charge by the use of the machine. So this is the next generation. So if you look at, I don't know, zip cars or hire cars, when you want a car, you hire one. When you don't want a car, you don't. The next business model could be the machine's chargeable by the hour or by the component or by the part. And digitalization from the machine tool point of view through a cloud, using what we have a product called MindSphere, can offer this to a company so that they don't lease the machine or sell the machine. You can then build it and use it as a tool as and when basis.
Well, this is clear. But can I connect my funnel-driven machine to your Siemens MindSphere? That's the question.
I'd like to say yes. I mean, Vanuc might not like this, but Siemens would say definitely yes. But it is an open system, so MindSphere is designed to be open, and it sits on top of Azure or AWS because I think Siemens dabbled in cloud platforms a couple of years ago, realised it's not our business. There are people out there doing it far better than we do, so we put our platform on top of this. But the downside of what you're saying there is when it comes into standardization, is an end user wants standards. So you can have a Mazak, a Morisiki, a Kawasaki, or whatever machine tool on the shop floor, and everyone connects. However, the machine builder doesn't want that because he wants you to buy one machine, connect to his cloud, and therefore only buy his machines. So there's that contradiction between the end user desire and the manufacturer desire to take that factory and ring fence it.
I was going to say, then it also goes back to the talk about standards this morning, where then you need to decide what it is you need from a machine. If it's in a brownfield site and it's maybe a machine that's got a very simple CNC on it, but you maybe still want to extract OEE data, or you want to work out how many parts that you're creating. What data is it you firstly need from that machine that the state-of-the-art machine will be able to have, but the older machine won't have? What is the data you want from a standards? What is it you want? Do you need to know what OEE, how many parts you're making, how many good parts you're making? Start with that as the basis. This is what I need from my factory, from whether it's a new machine or an old machine, and then that gives you the basis to work out how you get that data from that machine.
Thank you very much.
You have another question?
Yeah, but what you mentioned from the machine tool builder's perspective, I do not see, because not each and every machine tool producers is able to deliver all technology. So for sure, you may have machines with an Asian perspective, with Asian controllers, and then you deliver your specific grinding technology into this environment, and you have a Beckhoff, Siemens, Heidenhain controller. And that's a problem we face every day.
You're 100% right. One of the things that came out of the Ford project was some of the smaller OEMs said, well, we do not want to pay hundreds of thousands of euros for all this licensing for the software to generate these apps and these interfaces. So we then start looking at a whole new service sector where you bring somebody in, as you do as a subcontractor, to provide that service. So you can provide the OPC standards, the UMATI standards, but the OEM would like their own identity planted onto that interface. He can specify it, but if your car breaks down, you don't fix it yourself, you take it to a garage to get it fixed. Same thing with this service sector, which is now growing, where you want to have a low-code application to give your customer a value and give yourself a unique selling prospect, and a company will come along with software experts, with these young kids who sit on their phones all day, and they will design you an app to make that link between your machine, your server, and give you a service that you don't need to learn how to do it because you've brought a contractor in to develop that. OEMs have been doing it for years. If you've got a Heidenhain, a Fanuc, or a Siemens, you maybe have a specialization, but you bring a contractor in for what you don't specialize in. The same thing with this product. You don't want to do it. Does that answer your question? No? You don't look convinced?
Not really, because then somebody goes in between my customer and myself. What I do not want. I don't want to tell him my technology.
No, you're right.
Yeah.
But
I
But if
think
you do
this
the
is the
standards bit and then you decide what the data is, then I think that's a good start.
Gentlemen, now you're exactly at the point what I said in the beginning. It is exactly the point. It was the final thing. I said in the beginning, we're sitting here, we're building machine tools, and if we are not careful, some people will come in between us and will take the whole cake.
Yep.
And we just take, well, maybe not the 80% of the cake. So I think it's, Peter, Martin?
Maybe one last question. Yes. Mr. Scott, you mentioned that the government should be the enablers to help the SMEs to go the way into the future and digitalization. My question is, who is educating the governments to be enablers?
And therein lies the problem. At the moment, no one.
Was that the answer?
I think that is the question.
But please go ahead.
Yeah, but I think we have to work all together. If you think about that the government is not, have not the capability to do this, we need to move for doing this. It is holding our hands.
And we've just got to show the government the value of doing it. We've got to educate them in that, and it's got to start right at the early stages. You know, for the skills to come through, we've got to start in the primary schools. We've got to start in the early years. We can't. Oxford University engineering course teaches AI as an optional module in their final year. That's too late.
Yes, absolutely. Very good question, very good discussion, and please.
Yeah, just on this, we've recently had a second report done by a group of independent experts on Industry 5.0. And what they have identified as one of the big gaps is that if you have Industry 5.0, you also need Governance 5.0. So we're beginning to talk to government. For example, there will be an initiative in relation to artificial intelligence in the public sector. So we're beginning at European level to push out that also. Thanks.
Thank you very much. That's very good also that it's coming from your side. And of course, these are the big questions in industry, in government, in education, that we put these subjects at the front line, you know, and that we are aware of it and the next generation is aware of it. And maybe one challenge is also how to make the people in our age group or a little younger, but not completely young, also aware of it. You know, I think they're also a long time with us still. So I think that was a very, very interesting discussion. I get up once more. Is there one more question? No. That's a one. Marcus, very good. I sit down. You know, I think it's a very good discussion. Please.
No, I didn't. I was going to say no, actually, but now I've been forced to have the mic. I just wanted to say it's to Martin. I think it's our responsibility because the government are going to spend or waste money whatever we do. So we've got to persuade them to spend it in the right way. That was all.
Agreed. That's true. That's our money. And is there one more question? If there's not an immediate question, actually, besides two persons, you, Scott, and I think, and you, Julian, you have to leave. All the other lady and gentlemen, they will be tonight also with us. They're the whole afternoon still with us. Yeah? And please use this opportunity to drive this discussion, because I believe this is one of the most important discussions we have for the next years, you know, because we know how to build machine tools. I think we are very good at it, and we are leading in the world in machine tools, but suddenly there's a new component to that with an extremely high complexity. It's a question, how do we digitalize our machines? How do we digitalize our companies themselves? It's a right thing, how to digitalize the company, and not only the manufacturing, also the administration and so on. And then is, what does the customer and the regulator expect from us in respect of security? And where do we get the people to work in this environment, and how do we bring our people which work with us today and which are very valuable to adapt to it and to take what we heard also today, to take the fear from them. I hope that also the government, the EU, will be active in that, what we heard today. I think because we as industry, we need a framework we can work in. The customer wants to be sure that it has a safe environment. The customer, not only the B2C, we hardly have, but the B2B customer. That's one of the biggest hurdles we face at the moment in introducing remote care tools, you know, online tools, bringing machines to the cloud. It's always people are skeptical what's happening with this data, not only by us, but maybe somebody else might hack it. So these are big questions where we also need the support from the government and also from the institutions to drive innovation overall. I think it's, we need that not to only stay competitive in Europe, but to stay competitive worldwide. I would like to thank you for your attention and for your good questions here, and I would like to thank our members of the panel for this really very valuable input today. Thank you very much.